The last cause of market failure we want to talk about is something known as an externality. So, what we see is that sometimes consuming a product or producing a product can have an impact on a third party that acts as neither the producer or the consumer of that product. Now, these impacts can be positive or they can be negative. We see the positives, we refer to those as extra benefits, but the negatives we refer to that as extra costs. Now, these extra benefits or costs, these spillovers onto those third parties, they're known as externalities. An externality is a consequence, it can be either positive or negative, that's experienced by a third party. And that third party was, again, in no way involved in the production or consumption of that product. So, thinking about this, like we said, they can be either positive or negative. A positive externality we see is that whenever the consumption of or production of a product has a positive spillover on a third party or a benefit to a third party. A negative externality, on the other hand, the consumption or production has a negative spillover or a cost on a third party. So let's think about some examples of positive externalities. One example of a positive externality would be your education. Like, think about you going to school. Are you the only person who's going to benefit from you going to school? Well, no. I mean, your parents are benefiting. Maybe your siblings are benefiting from that. We see that your future family will benefit from you going to school. Your future employer will benefit from you going to school. Now, they're going to reap all these benefits, but they're not the ones going to school. You are. They're reaping the benefits from you going to school. Your consumption of school is having positive benefits on third parties. Same thing with electric cars, right? Electric cars, we see that when you drive an electric car, yeah, it has a lot to do with you wanting to have a positive impact on the environment. Well, that's the idea of a positive externality. If I go drive an electric car, that's going to save me on gas, and that's awesome, but I'm not the only one benefiting from it. What we end up seeing is that everybody is benefiting from me driving an electric car. Nobody else is involved in the consumption of me, you know, driving an electric car or owning an electric car, but they're having those benefits. Maybe a little bit more recent of an example can apply to COVID and the idea of wearing a mask. Wearing a mask and participating in that creates positive externalities. By me wearing a mask, it is preventing other people from getting COVID from me. They're not participating at all in that wearing of the mask, but the wearing of the mask has a positive externality. It prevents the spread of the virus. Same thing with, like we said, getting a flu shot or anything like that. I get the flu shot so that I don't get sick, but guess who else doesn't get sick? All the other people I come in contact with. Now, what's a negative externality? What's an example of that? Well, I think when a lot of people think of is like pollution. So whenever a factory pollutes, that's a negative externality of production. They might create smog or something like that that's having a harmful impact on the environment, and it's hurting maybe the neighbors around them and the people who live around them. Secondhand smoke is another example of that, right? People who um, have secondhand smoke, it has to do with the fact that they are around somebody who is consuming cigarettes, but that person consuming the cigarettes is not the only person incurring the cost. The cost is being is that cost is spilling over onto other people, onto these third parties. And so what we end up seeing is that externalities cause market failure because the initial transaction, it only considers either the private benefits or the private costs. It doesn't factor in the benefits or the costs in that spillover. So what we're saying is it's not really factoring in what we call the social benefit or the social cost. And because it doesn't factor all those in, it creates deadweight loss. Here's really kind of what we mean by that. We say that in the presence of externalities indicates that goods that create positive externalities are underproduced. I mean, think about it this way. Electric cars, we all want more of that. We all want better cars for the environment. Education, we all want more of that. We all want more education. We want people to be better educated to help the future. At the same time, goods creating negative externalities, we say are overproduced. We end up seeing that, like, there's too much smoking, too much pollution. There's too much of those things because it's only considering the private costs, and we're not factoring in the entire social costs.